In fighting, they say that black and gold is that which befits a champion. Is 2024 the year of the Steelers? Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms, and I've got a fun little video here today. We're going to be breaking down the Pittsburgh offense. It's going to be similar to the video that I did a couple of weeks ago, breaking down the pass catchers for the Arizona Cardinals. So if you like that kind of content, this will be right up your alley. Everyone that's new, thank you guys for checking this video out, and all our returning subs and everybody that's a routine listener, thanks for coming back. We appreciate you guys. Really quickly, before we get into the video, if you can, just like, comment, and subscribe on the video and the channel on YouTube. We're trying to grow the YouTube channel, and we can't do that without you. So thank you guys so much for subscribing, and we've grown quite a bit in the last year. And again, we owe it all to you guys. We're so appreciative of you guys making that happen. And if you can, leave a comment down below as well. If you like this content, and I'm trying to do a little bit more of the team-centric breakdowns, talking about them as a holistic approach this year. If you have a team that you want us to get to or want me to get to this offseason, just let me know down in the comments and I'd be happy to add it to the list. I've got certain ones I want to hit first, but after that, I'm very open to your guys' suggestions. So if you like a certain team, leave a comment down below. And really quickly, you can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and at FF After Dark for the podcast. So thank you guys again for checking this out. Now let's get into it. And the main reason I wanted to do the Pittsburgh Steelers is I think that this team is completely undervalued in relation to their actual fantasy finish, what they're going to be able to do this upcoming season. And, we're going to start right at the top with the quarterback. We're going to start with Russell Wilson. He's currently ranked as the quarterback number 33. And I think that this is what is absolutely crazy. Last year in 14 games, Sleeper says 15, but for whatever reason, he played 14, 3 games where he had no snaps at all. He finishes the quarterback number 14 in 14 games played. Only 297 completions for 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Pretty efficient on that front. Felt like it was much worse. If you were to check out the stats and the sentiment on this team, it felt a lot more like the 2022 Denver Broncos, where it was 16-11 touchdown interception, but he was actually pretty efficient with the ball last year. Couple that with the fact that he had 80 rushing attempts for 341 yards. That's where a lot of his fantasy value kind of elevated him back to fantasy relevance last year. 3 rushing touchdowns. Let's get into why I don't think Russell Wilson is completely dust like everyone kind of says he is. Now, you go back to a couple years ago with Seattle, Russell Wilson's balling out in 2021, breaks his hand, has a little bit of a down season coming off the hand injury. They ultimately trade him to the Denver Broncos for a haul. The Broncos bring in Nathaniel Hackett. That's an absolute train wreck. Russell Wilson looks like crap, complete crap. Everyone says that he's done then. They trade a first-round pick for Sean Payton, and everyone says, well, now Russell Wilson's going to be really good. Sean Payton's going to completely fix him. And I like Sean Payton for the Broncos long-term, but I don't think that that was ever going to work out from a stylistic matchup. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I've listened to enough people who are more of an expert in this topic in this field than I am. So I'm just going to summarize it a little bit, and I'm able to put my own little spin on it. But everybody that I've heard talk about this situation is that Russell Wilson is not the type of quarterback that Sean Payton wants. He wants a timing quarterback. Wide receiver is going to be at this spot in 3.5 seconds. You're going to throw it right here, and the wide receiver is going to be wide open at that point. Russell Wilson likes to see it. And, say what you will about that, the different styles of quarterback. I don't really care there. It works for both types of quarterbacks. Tom Brady was always a timing quarterback. He's going to go 0.1 second or 0.5 seconds, balls out, and it's to Julian Edelman or whoever it was, right? And it was just you're going to be in this spot at this time, and I'm going to get the ball right here, right then. other guys like to see it. And it's not saying that one is worse and one is better. Maybe Tom's is better because he has so many Super Bowls. But from fantasy perspective, it really does not matter. There's plenty of quarterbacks that like to see it open instead of just, throwing to a spot on the field. That's what Sean Payton wants. And we saw that a lot last year. And I remember watching a lot of the Broncos games and saying, why does this feel so disjointed? Like, why does it feel so gross to watch? Like, it's just, Sean Payton was not calling certain plays in certain situations. And it was not pretty last year. And everyone says, well, Russell Wilson can't play with Sean Payton. Now he's completely busted. He's completely done. Now, I don't think that's completely true. Arthur Smith is a much better stylistic matchup for what Russell Wilson wants to do. And if you look back to what he was able to do in Atlanta last year, the offense has been a little bit shaky, and that's more of an Arthur Smith thing than it is an Atlanta talent thing. But Arthur Smith, the head coach, was not a great, he was not a great head coach, but he was a good offensive mind. Creative system, creative plays, everything like that. The problem came in where the personnel usage that Arthur Smith wanted to use in certain packages and things like that. The good news is he's not the head coach here, and it's still Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin will not tolerate this shenanigans that Arthur Smith is going to be trying to pull with some of these packages. Let's sit George Pickens on this red zone package for Dez Fitzpatrick. That's totally something that Arthur Smith would probably try to do. And Mike Tomlin will say, no, get that crap out of here. It's not going to happen. Get George back on the field. I want our best players on the field in every situation. So Arthur Smith's going to be reined in by Mike Tomlin, which will be good for this offense, and I think good for Arthur Smith. And that's where I think it's going to benefit Russell Wilson. The two stylistically match up very, very well. Russell Wilson also, has an incentive to play well this year and to prove it. And for everyone saying, well, he signed a vet minimum contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers, how good can he really be? Well, he only did that because the Broncos are still paying him $35 million to not play for them this year. They wanted to be rid of his contract, so they cut him, and he signs a minimum contract with the Steelers to avoid them having to pay anything above that. So basically the way it worked was every dollar that the Steelers paid Russell Wilson came out of what the Broncos are paying Russell Wilson. So they would have to take that on their cap instead of the Broncos taking it on their cap, right? So, instead they could pay Russell Wilson $5 million, but that's just $5 million less that the Broncos have to pay. So why do that if you're the Steelers, right? Just pay him $1 million and let the Broncos foot the rest of that bill for the 2024 season. So I don't think that the contract is a good arguing point for why Russell Wilson is completely washed and going to be terrible in this offense. And if you look at it too, again, with the fantasy rushing that he was able to do, I think that elevated a lot of his games last year. And he had multiple games where he had 2-3 touchdowns, but it was just not pretty to watch. I think that when you look at the skill players of this team, Pat Freiermuth, you've got George Pickens, Roman Wilson, and Van Jefferson, I think those just fit Russell Wilson as a playmaker a lot better than Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and I don't even remember the tight end's name, the guy from New Orleans that Sean Payton brought over. And I just think that this offense as a whole is a lot better off than the Broncos are right now. So I think Russell Wilson's going to be fine, and he's going to be in the 12 to 15 range for the quarterback season, the season-ending finish, right? And he's currently ranked the quarterback number 33. And you're going to say, well, it's Dynasty, right? How many years am I going to have Russell Wilson? Well, he's a free agent next year. Now, he could always re-sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, or another hypothetical is he could go to the New York Giants. They're rumored to be done with Daniel Jones after this year, if things don't go well. Russell Wilson and the Giants have been flirting around each other for the last, 5 years. It's been nonstop. Rihanna, his wife, is it Rihanna? I think that's his wife. Sierra, that's the one. She is based out of New York, so she does a lot of business out of there. I think their main house is actually in New York, so where his kids stay all the time and everything. So they want to be in New York. So in a year's time, if you told me he's the quarterback for the New York Giants, I would not be shocked. So you could have a 2-year contract next year with Russell Wilson and the Giants, and you got 3 years suddenly of Russell Wilson. And at quarterback number 33, right? You're looking at guys ahead of him like Daniel Jones at 31, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers. In a year's time, is Aaron Rodgers even going to be in the league? Probably not. Geno Smith, Michael Penix. Michael Penix, you might not even be able to start him for 2 to 3 years. And in that entire time, you can have Russell Wilson on your roster. So I do think that Russ is being a little bit undervalued. And I think that, for the price that he's at, man, it's very hard to pass up, especially in Dynasty. I know there's a lot of risk, but man, there's a lot of potential reward there as well. And if you need quarterback, man, it doesn't get much cheaper than Russell Wilson right now in Dynasty. Let's go to the running back position here and talk over these two guys, Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. Now, Najee is currently the running back number 21. Jaylen Warren is the running back number 32. And specifically on Najee, I like this fit, again, with Arthur Smith in this pairing. A lot of people are going to point to the contract where, they didn't sign his 5th-year option. Well, yeah, they didn't want to pay him $14 million guaranteed with no out, not knowing what he's going to be able to do in an Arthur Smith offense. It's a whole new system coming over here, and I think that Najee is set up for a very good season. And when you look at it, if you look at the last couple of years, I think that you've seen a gradual decline in his fantasy finish. Finished number 3 as a rookie, 14 the year after that, and then 23 this last year. Rushing yardage wise, he had 1,200 his rookie year, a little over 1,000 the last 2 years, 3 yardage difference. He was the most efficient carrying the ball last year that he's been in his entire career. He's had 7, and then 8 last year rushing touchdowns. So very consistent running the ball. The big drop off that we've seen from Najee Harris from his rookie year is the passing usage. And it makes sense, right? Because his rookie year, he had Ben Roethlisberger, 94 targets, 74 catches for 450 yards as a rookie. Wasn't able to continue that because Ben Roethlisberger retired. They went to Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett the year after that. Or maybe that wasn't even that year. I think maybe that was, I don't remember the whole timeline here, but I know Kenny Pickett was 2022, and I think that was the Mitch year. But I know Mason Rudolph started some games in there too, so it was kind of a mess. It's been a mess ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired. But 53 targets in 2022, 38 this last year. Again, they had some Kenny Pickett, some Mason Rudolph, and I think Josh Dobbs. I don't remember who all played for this team last year, but it's been a nightmare on the offensive side of the ball from the quarterback position. You get a little bit of stability in there with Russell Wilson, who does like to target the running back as well. I could see these target numbers jumping back up. I don't think they're going to get to 94 that he has had as a rookie, but I do think that around the 50 to 60 target mark with 40 to 50 catches, I think that's entirely possible and in his realm of opportunities. And you couple that with the consistency that he's had as a runner, and very easily, I think that you could see Najee Harris finish, instead of running back 23 this last year, as a top 15, top 12 running back this upcoming year because of more usage in the passing game and potentially a few more touchdowns as well, given the Arthur Smith aspect of this offense. So I think Najee is being a little bit undervalued, and you're going to say, well, he was really bad last year. But if you take out that first month where he was averaging about 7.5 points, the rest of the season he was averaging about 13 to 15 points. I'm just eyeballing this and kind of gut feeling this. So it was probably around 14 points. That's a lot better than 7, right? And I do think that the second half of the season is more in line. We've seen that the last couple years. I don't know why. He starts very, very slowly, and it's almost always after the bye that he starts, picking it up and averages a lot more points. So something in there with that, and maybe hopefully he can smooth that transition out. But again, for the value of Najee Harris, you're talking about the 205. I would happily take Najee Harris for the 205 in a dynasty league right now. So especially if I'm running back needy. I get it, he's a little bit older, but he was old coming out. He's 26 right now. He was 23 when he came out as a rookie. I think he's got plenty of tread left on the tires. And, whether he's with Pittsburgh in 2025 or not, I think there's still fantasy value, especially again for the 205 for Najee Harris. Now, his running back counterpart, Jaylen Warren, this might be the reason why I think that Najee's had a little bit of a dip in his receiving usage. Jaylen Warren is the more explosive of the two running backs. Smaller guy, 5'8", 215 pounds. He's pretty old as well, 25 years old. He was an old rookie, just like Najee was. But last year, he had 149 carries for 784 yards, averaging about 5.26 per carry, 4 touchdowns. But the big usage that was very nice for him last year was 74 targets for 61 catches and 370 yards through the air. Now, Jaylen Warren, very explosive guy, and in a PPR league, those target numbers were very, very valuable. I could see that number coming down a little bit, and I know people are going to say, oh, that's just take lock. Oh, I don't see why people think that Jaylen Warren is going to suddenly be the bell cow for this team. Only one game was he over 60% of the snaps last year, and it wasn't until the back half of the year that he was getting around 50%. In the meantime, Najee only had 2 games last year under 50%, so I don't know. I think that Najee is still going to be the primary guy. They want him to be the primary guy. Both guys, I think, are free agents next year, so they don't really have them long term as well. Jaylen Warren at running back number 32, though, I think can definitely return on that value, especially, again, given the Arthur Smith offense and what he was doing in Atlanta, the way that he used both of these guys. I do think that there's potential upside in Jaylen Warren. And again, estimated value is the 211 to 212. You're talking Troy Franklin or Jaylen Warren. And for me personally, I'm taking Jaylen Warren, especially if I'm a contender. But I understand people being a little bit more out on him. But man, it's just hard for me to pass up that value in Jaylen Warren. Now, I don't think he's going to be a ceiling play, but he's more of a get them all you can, and if something does happen to Najee, because it's running backs, right, and bad things happen to these guys all the time, all of a sudden you might have a league winner in Jaylen Warren. So just a name. I don't think that he has a lot of long-term value, though, after the Steelers. I just don't think he's going to be able to live up to that too well. So a little bit more of a shorter window versus Najee, who was a first-round pick. The first-round pick value does just help you with your next contracts. It just carries with you longer. Teams are more willing to take a chance on giving you a decent contract if you're a first-round pick versus not. And that's just the unfortunate situation, but I think that's pretty realistic to this situation here. All right, now going to the receivers, and there's really only one that I want to talk about. They drafted Roman Wilson in the 3rd round this last year, and in this last draft. Van Jefferson comes over as a free agent, and he's kind of interesting, but I think it's going to be mostly just George Pickens and Roman Wilson. I talked about Roman Wilson a lot with the rookie breakdown, and I loved Roman Wilson because I thought he was the ultimate safety blanket. And when you think of Russell Wilson, safety blanket, who do you think of? You think of Doug Baldwin. You think of Tyler Lockett back in Seattle, right? And I think that that's what Roman Wilson can do, especially as a rookie. I think that he's going to have a lot of opportunity, and people are going to say, well, he's a rookie. He's not going to be able to do that much this year. But you go back to Juju's year when you had a strong outside primary receiver, and Juju as a rookie was able to do very, very well. And that's what, a lot of people thought that the breakout for Juju was going to be forever, and it honestly just didn't last. But I think that the Steelers are not afraid to put a rookie out there and give him a lot of opportunity. And again, I love Roman Wilson. I think that he's going to be very good for this team, but he's a rookie, right? And he's a 3rd-round rookie pick, early 3rd round. I think that's an absolute crime. I think that, he's my he's my number 5 receiver in this draft class. I think he's very, very good. And I think that he's a massive value at his ADP. But that's just my 2 cents on it right there. But the main guy is George Pickens. And, 23 years old, 3rd year with the team. Never finished above a top 30 wide receiver. Last year he had 63 catches for 1,140 yards, 5 touchdowns. I do think that number can go up this year. Very boom bust. That's kind of the MO of George Pickens the last couple of years. Now, they did have Deontay Johnson for about this half of the year, and you really saw the breakdown when Deontay Johnson came back in week 7. They played in the same game together. George Pickens had 17 points in that game, 5 catches for 107, whereas, 5 for 79 for Deontay Johnson. But after that, it was very much the Deontay Johnson show, except for a few sporadic George Pickens weeks, right? And that middle stretch from weeks 8 to weeks 13 last year, and really until week 16, it was very bad to have George Pickens those weeks. But then he kind of capped it off with 36 points against Cincinnati, 21 against Seattle. Big games, the Cincy game, he had 4 catches for 195 and 2. He had a Randy Moss game right there, 7 for 131 against Seattle at the end of the year. And again, I think the quarterback play has been the biggest detractor from George Pickens. He was behind Deontay Johnson. Now he's the number 1. I think that he's got the talent. And just going back to that year, I was in love with George Pickens. I thought that George Pickens was going to be a superstar. And finally, we get to see what he can do as the number 1 on this team with a competent quarterback. I would love to see what George Pickens could have done with Ben Roethlisberger, but he came in right after him, right? So we'll see what he can do. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity. And again, he's valued as the wide receiver number 26. And I think that it's so low compared to what he has the potential and the ceiling to do. You've got T. Higgins ahead of him. You've got Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, and JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. All these guys are ahead of George Pickens, and they could be very good. But, man, if George Pickens hits his ceiling, he's going to blow these guys out of the water, and you're going to be talking about a top 12 dynasty wide receiver if he can hit that ceiling. Now, he's a little bit more expensive. He's the 110 to 112 right now in rookie pick value. And I do think that that's a little bit more risky, right? Where if he doesn't break out and it is more of the Roman Wilson show, that scares me a little bit of that investment. But again, if he does hit, you're talking about a top 12 guy, and this is going to be the year that you're going to know instantly if he's going to hit or if he's not. The one downside is he's only got 1 more year. He's got 2025, and then he's going to be a free agent, right? And Pittsburgh, the last few years, the last couple of decades, they do not sign these guys typically to multi-year contracts. They signed Deontay Johnson, and then 1 year into it, they traded him away. So they just do not like to sign these guys to many-year contracts, to extensions after the rookie year. And they're so good at getting these receivers that I don't fully blame them. It is risky because you miss and you're completely screwed for a long period of time. But I do think that George Pickens, if he leaves the Steelers, he can be productive elsewhere. And I'm not too worried about 2 years from now for Dynasty, right? I think that he at that point, he's only 25 years old. He could re-sign with the Steelers. It's too far away to even really think about and process too much. So George Pickens, I think he is an absolute steal at 26 overall. And there's a lot of guys I'd be taking him over right now. Then the last guy I want to talk about was going to be the tight end, Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth is someone that I think was completely forgotten last year. Quarterback play was terrible, but you go back to his sophomore year, 2022, Finished as the tight end number 8, had 98 targets for 63 catches, 730 yards, only 2 touchdowns. I do think that he's a little bit more of a touchdown threat than what he's shown so far. His rookie year, he had 7 touchdowns, and then ever since then, with the struggling quarterback play, it's been a lot worse for it. Russell Wilson loves the tight end position. He's going to be able to target Pat Freiermuth quite a bit. I honestly think that Pat Freiermuth might be the number 3 target in this entire offense. So, 47 targets last year in 12 games played. I think he's going to be back to around that 80 to 90 target number. And at that point, you're going to be talking about 60 catches, give or take, for about probably 650 to 700 yards. And maybe 5 to 7 touchdowns. That's good enough to be a top 12 fantasy tight end. And when you look at the other tight ends, he's currently ranked number 16 behind like Cole Kmet, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz is right there as well. And some of the other guys here, I'm just looking at the full list of tight ends. You've got Jake Ferguson is ahead of him, which I do agree with, but Ben Sennett is in front of him. We don't even know what Jaden Daniels is going to do in that offense, if he can even be a competent NFL quarterback yet. It's rookie to rookie action here, and you've got him over someone like Pat Freiermuth. So I do think that that's a little bit crazy. You've got other guys like Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, Brock Bowers. Like, I would not be shocked if Travis Kelce has a down year finally for the first time ever. Pat Freiermuth could easily finish ahead of Travis Kelce. Now, I'm not betting that. Trust me, I'm not betting that. I think Travis Kelce from a PPR standpoint is going to be just fine. But he is older, guys. Injuries are more likely the older you get. So just keep that in mind with Travis Kelce. And George Kittle, again, he's another guy in front of him. These are older tight ends that are much further along in their NFL careers, is the best way I can say that, where Pat Freiermuth is only 25 years old, 25 and a half. He won't even be 26 until halfway through the season, around playoff time. So he's young, guys, and I think that you can get this guy. He used to be a top 12 guy just a couple years ago, top 10 guy a couple years ago after his rookie year, and it all kind of fell apart with the bad quarterback play. Quarterbacks are kind of important for the tight end position. So I do think that Pat Freiermuth is being undervalued as well. So that is the entire Steelers offense. Let me know, again, your thoughts on this breakdown and who you agree with, who you disagree with. Am I overlooking somebody? Am I being too optimistic on Russ? Is he completely washed? Let me know your thoughts down below. Again, one last time, if you can, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out tons of content for you guys, and we appreciate you all off season long. Follow me on Twitter, and that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. So thank you guys again, if you're new, for checking out the whole video. And if you are a returning listener, we appreciate you guys. And until next time, have a good night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?